The origin of the I, the human world that we live in today, that we have created, is completely based not on knowledge but on time. And I'll cover a lot about time in this video because not a lot of people talk about or dwell into what time actually is. The human world that we live in 2025 now, if you think about yourself, it's how do you even think about time? What does time mean to you? Have you ever thought about it? The time that you have been told about is the morning, the evening, the night, the AM, the PM. That's about it. You have been taught about the physical time, which the time that we humans created for our own convenience. But in reality, in physicality, there exists a movement that is a flow. In reality, the day, the morning, the night, the evening, the AM, the PM, these words, these numbers do not really exist. This might come as a shock to you, but this time that we have invented is only convenient only for the human ecosystem. It really does not exist outside of it. If you have a dog or a cat and you talk to it about the time, it's 2 o'clock. It doesn't care which time it is. The animals, the birds, they are in sync with nature. But we humans, we have got in sync with the time that we created for our own conveniences for the work. Now, the dilemma here is we are so identified with the time that we have created and we have forgotten about a very crucial aspect of another time. There is the physical time that we refer to as morning, evening, night, the AM, the PM, that we wanted it, that we created it for our own convenience. That's one aspect of time. And there's the other aspect of time, which is the psychological time, which we call the present, the past, and the future. Now, here's a dilemma that this time really does not exist psychologically, and even the time that we have created here for our convenience, this also does not exist. So, let me dive into this. The time that we talk about as the past, it is time. I don't know if this is the first time you're listening about the past as time, because when you talk about past, it has to be about in the realm of the time, the psychological time. That doesn't mean that if you are 30 now and you're thinking something about what you did when you were 5 years old, 1 year old, 20-year old, or something that you did yesterday, or something that you do something that you did just a few moments ago, even there the psychological time exists. So time is not something that you go back in time and refer to. It is something that you remember here in the present itself. And the time that we also project and plan about is what we have called the future. Now, the future is something that has not happened yet, and the things that we plan for the future is always here in the present itself. So, if you see the past, the future, it's in the present always. So, the illusion of the past and the future is always happening in the present. It's always here. But what a lot of people do not understand here is that this illusion is created because of the psychological time about for the misunderstanding of what time itself is, and which we have interpreted as past and future, which are all but remembrances of our memories in the present itself. Now the problem happens, what happens here is that nobody even talks about the time that exists in our inner world. If you just take a look at the people around you, who really talks about psychological time? Who really talks about the time up here in the mind? Nobody. I didn't know about it till I was 30 years old. And imagine living 30 years or whatever age you're at without ever realizing there's a clock, that there's an internal clock that itself is an illusion. First, recognizing that there's a clock up there is a major thing itself. But the next thing to do is once you recognize, and if this is the first time you're hearing that there's an internal clock, that there's an illusion of time psychologically, then the second thing to do after recognizing that is to see how that psychological time exists, how it is created each and every moment. Is it created on its own, or it is the unawareness of our own mind that ends up creating this particular time psychologically? So, since you have been born, you have accumulated a lot of memories, either knowingly or unknowingly, because all the senses of the body are always accumulating memories, experiences, no matter where you are, what you're doing, who you are, it doesn't matter. It is through these five senses that we have physically that the memories are accumulated. Now, this is the current scenario, and the other current scenario in the modern world that we live in 2025 is that if you see the evolution of humanity, if we see what we have based our whole progress on, seems to be knowledge. Knowledge in the form of information. And if a group of people or one person has done a particular work, and if that has happened for in a particular century, and another group of people or another person has taken up this particular work and he has worked on top of that, improved it, made it better, that becomes progress where that is based on knowledge. Now, for each one of us to have access to our past, to have that capability to access the past, not only of another person, but of our own past. And even when we are talking about gathering information of people who have done the work before us, even if it is just a week ago, a century ago, it doesn't matter. But the capability of the mind to access that information of the past is something that is there in each of us. It is not just in a human capability. This capability of accessing the past is there in all living beings. Take animals, take birds, or take any organism for that matter on this planet. And I'm sure the same applies to any organism if there's life on other planets or other galaxies. I'm pretty sure that any living being will have access to the information that it has gathered throughout its life. Now, as we are talking about humanity and how we are able to access information of our own past, of our own memories. For this, we have to go back and see where it all started. That's why I call it the origin of I. I being, today, if you see, the most number of times that you use a particular word is I. I did this. I did that. I want to do this. I am doing this. I am doing that. I will be doing that. I will be achieving this. I will study that. I will learn this. I will become that. And all this is based on the I. Now, I want to go back to the root of where the I was itself created, the origin of the I. Now, what is the point of going to the root of something? If there's a problem to be solved permanently, if you do not cut it at the root level, it is like you're just trimming off the branches. You're really not uprooting the tree itself. The tree The tree itself is a problem, but if you just go on cutting the branches of it, the tree remains, and you're never really uprooting the problem, which is the tree itself. Now, if I have to go down to the root of the development of this I that we use today so regularly, so consistently, that we are not even aware of how much we are using it, and nobody even questions why am I using I. The problem is not about using the I. Now, as I will go into the roots of it, you'll understand why I'm talking about it. Is when before the development of humans, as we are now, before we diverged into a different direction from other species, there was not a language. This I'm talking about even before languages were created, in between two humans to talk. Initially, it was all about survival because the whole Earth was like that. It was all about survival of the fittest, where humans in the pre early history era were really being attacked by a lot of other species. They were killed by other species. Now they survive. They they kill the other animal for their own survival and maybe for food also. But the most important criteria here is that people used to protect themselves from being killed, and this is an instinct in all the animals. Initially, before there was a language, like how you see a dog now, how you see a cat, how you see any animal or a bird, if you go near it, it will withdraw itself. If you don't know that animal, it will by default it will withdraw and it will see you as the enemy. It will see you as something that is going to come to kill it. It's something that has been there for ages. It's been there for thousands and millions of years, long before we came into any kind of shape that we are in it now. In organisms, this is a very instinctual thing, and back then, in the early human era, we developed this knack, and it was already there. That's why we could access that information, that how to uh, live among other animals by not getting ourselves killed. So, if there's an animal and a person killed it and survived, that was about it. At that time, it was all about just survival. He protected himself, he killed that animal that was attacking him, and he survived. And the next time any attack happened to that particular person, he would know that by doing this and this, I was able to protect myself from that particular attack. So that's the information that existed. That's the information that grew in a person at that time. Now this was not a problem because now it is similar to how animals today protect themselves from humans, for example. If we are going with the intention of killing a particular animal, that animal would know it because it's a very sensory thing to sense danger. And the if the animal has protected itself in the past from humans, it would know what to do and how to escape and protect itself from humans. This is a level of information that the animal already possesses, and all it does is it just goes and accesses the information and takes action. And we in the early human era did the same thing. It's 10 o'clock. It was not a problem till then. And there came a point where that person who protected himself from that animal, somehow there was a slight shift in the functioning of the mind. And instead of just accessing, going back to the information, accessing it, and taking actions to protect himself. Now, what happened is he remembered that he he survived that particular attack, and he remembered it now, and he called it, I survived. I did that. This, I'm not saying it happened, obviously, it didn't happen in the form of English, but there was a sense of I-ness where this particular person identified with what he did, and he remembered it with a connection with the past, because till then there was no connection between what he was in that present moment and what he had done with that information. That is the origin of I. This, a lot of people will not agree, a lot of people will not understand the whole root of it. This is true, what I just said, because the same thing happens even now in your day to day life, in any human being's life. It's it's so obvious if you just look at how an identity is created. So when that person in the pre-human era, instead of just going back, accessing the information and coming and taking action, and that was it. Before that, there was no I. There's no identification with the information that he had for survival. But the moment he identified himself as, I did that, I survived that incident, I protected myself, I ate that, I liked it, I won that again. That was the origin of I, and it blew. If you think AI is blowing now in the age of the internet and with all the capabilities that we have technologically now, at that time the I blew in the mind of humanity. So if one person did that, um, the mind of humanity is such that anybody around him or anybody who is connected with that consciousness or consciousness of man gets it. That's how it works. It's like a beehive where everything is connected. This may sound very fantastical, but it's not a fantasy. It's something that's happening today itself, even today, because that was the root of the I. You can see today that when you are using these particular words, when you say, I did that, I went to work at 8 o'clock, I did this yesterday, I went out in the weekend, I met this particular friend. Yes, we need these dialogues to talk to another person to convey what we did in actions. But what has happened is, since that one person in the initial human era identified himself with that information, that's when the whole crisis of identity happened. That's when the whole attachment to the identity took place, and it has not stopped. It has been there for thousands of years, and that was the tipping point of why we humans as a race just went beyond, above and beyond all other species. Because then we identified with our past, and then we were able to use that past in a way where we could make things better. That was really a tipping point, if you ask me, about humanity, where we were able to identify with the information and build on top of it, make it even better. Today, no matter what language you talk in, and because I'm talking in English, I can only convey it in English. Since we are born, we have a lot of memories, we have a lot of experiences, and when you're watching this video, you would already have a lot of information about your own life. Yes, remember one particular time where you have really had that intensity of something that you did, your most highest experience of your life. Now, your mind will go to that particular memory, right? The mind going to that memory is not a problem. The mind going to that memory is not a problem. But if there's an attachment with that memory, then there's a problem. For example, I am recording this video. If I have any attachment about recording this video, it would create a sort of link between who I am and what I'm doing. That particular thing is the attachment that people suffer. Who they are and what they're doing, what they have done, what they will be doing. What they have done is the past, what they're doing is the present, what they will be doing in the future. What they have already done is the past, what they are currently doing is the present, what they will be doing is the future. And if you see, all of this three has time attached to it. It's very essential to understand what psychological time is. That's why when we talk about the origin of the I, it's very essential to see where it started. And now that it is established, now we can talk about how the I is created today, how the I is being generated every moment of your life in whatever you're doing and however you interpret your whole life, be it anything. If, for example, I'll take an example of career, for example. If you are an engineer, you have worked so hard to be an engineer, yes? You have studied for years. You might as well have worked for more than a decade or even for decades. Now, what you have is an attachment to that particular identity that you are an engineer or you're a doctor. You take any profession, any career, you have an attachment to it. And you have developed an identity about it in your mind. And it's necessary to function in the world, but that's about it. But when you're done with that work, when you're, for example, if you're a coder and you're done with coding on the laptop, and even after that, you have that sense of identity that you are someone who does that. So that kind of thought itself creates an identity. And nowadays, it is not just about thinking about what people do. It is a repetition, and it is a consistent repetition over a long period of time on a daily basis, based because of the internet that we have and because of the words that we use for communication and the repeated thoughts that we think. It's been all about consistently validating our identities, be it the sports team you support, be it the party that you support politically, be it the dress that you like, be it the company that you want to open, it doesn't matter. It is all an identity. Even the country that you belong to is an identity. And even the ideas that you have is an identity. The beliefs that you hold is an identity. It is very crucial to understand that the physical time that we humans have invented is an illusion. And the psychological time that we have been calling as past, present, and future is again an illusion. All that is present is one unending moment, which is here and now, which is the present moment, which is all there is. And just to get this particular fact right, it takes decades for a particular human being because the whole momentum of the illusion of what time is, which is invented by man, people are sucked into that particular ecosystem. And it takes years and decades to understand that it just does not exist outside of human ecosystem. Time is the real enemy here. It's not the past, it's not the memories, it's not the skills, it's not the knowledge, it's not other people, it's not even yourself, but the inner time that we have misunderstood completely That's the real enemy that each human being should confront. Each human being should at least try to understand what time is. Because the whole of mankind has been built on time, and on only because there is time as the foundation has there been knowledge and information. Now, if you just want to have that experiment in your own life, that psychological time does exist, that it is an illusion, all you have to do is what you did in the morning, what you did during the whole day, what you do during the whole day. When you remember it, it is not something that is happening right now. It's something that you already done, but you remember it because your mind is accessing that information. And the problem here is that you have attached yourself with that particular actions that you have taken during the day, the meanings that you've given to it. Definitely, we need a lot of um, work to exist in this world, to live in this world, to have a lifestyle, to make a livelihood. And definitely, that's the hard truth of life. But a human being can be free of all the attachments. If you just do, if you just see what the mind is, if you just observe the mind carefully about what it is doing to you, and if you just, and this is the key to the whole lock that has not been opened in humanity in a lot of people. The key is time. If you just understand what time is and how you yourself are creating psychological time, because the past does not exist, the future does not exist. Please be very aware of this in your thinking also, because even when you say the word I, the time has already come in. In each of your thought, there is time. Thought cannot exist unless there is time. The thought itself is time. Sink that in. What you think, whenever you think, the time exists there, psychological time, and you suffer because of the thoughts, and you are fundamentally suffering because the psychological time exists in your mind. When we call Gautama the Buddha, Buddha means what? He went beyond the mind, Buddhi. What does that mean? That means he went beyond the illusion of time, of the mind. It's a very difficult thing to do for someone who is really unconscious, but as you become more and more aware that you are the one creating the psychological time, it is not happening on its own. Every second, every moment, you're creating that particular time by not being aware that the time exists in your mind. You are the one who is fueling that particular psychological time in your mind. And the only solution to all this is, the only key is the awareness of the time itself. That when you're thinking, there is time involved in it. When you're even having images in your mind, there's time involved in it. The only moment where time is not involved in your psychology is when the brain is completely quiet. It can be completely quiet when there's no thinking involved in it. And the, the only time that thinking won't be involved in it, that you will have a quiet mind, is when time doesn't exist in it. Please look into this. Google it, read about it, watch my other videos, but do read a lot about what time is. But the most important thing for you to do is to see for yourself as to what time means to you, because all this while you have lived with time as if it's just something that you have to set time for meetings to meet other people, something where that you have to go to some place at this particular time, that you have to arrive at that time, that you have to book the flight for this particular time, that you have to wake up in the morning, which is time again, that you have to sleep at night, which is at this particular time, which is time again. That's something that we need on a daily basis if we have to create a particular routine, and that's fine at its place. But the real enemy is psychological time. That's the suffering that you're creating within yourself. So once the psychological time ends, that's when you're free of suffering. Because then what will happen to a particular human being is the person who created that identity in the pre-human era by identifying himself with the information, where it was just supposed to be going back to the information, accessing that information and doing it in action. That was about it. You become that person who was before that particular time, who who where you will just access the information that you need from your memory and you'll just take the actions. That's it. That's about it. You will not feel guilt, you will not feel shame, you will not feel anger. And I'm not saying you this as for this that these things are very unhealthy. These things are unhealthy. The emotions, the feelings, the thinking, everything is unhealthy when you are unaware of it. Please see that there's a healthy version for all the emotions. That's why we can experience so many things when in the form of being humans. But the problem is the unawareness of all these emotions that creates a turmoil within the mind. So when there's no attachment, there's no identity to with the information that you're going to use in the present. When you're accessing your past for the memories to remember anything for work or for a particular person or for anything for that matter, then even it is very unconscious, right? Even just a subtle thing about, for example, if you have to walk, it's hard coded in your brain that this is how you have walked, and the body already remembers it. In the same way, when you become free of psychological time, the body will remember that also. That's why it's very important to be free of time, because it is not just the mind that becomes free of time, even your body becomes free of it. Doesn't mean you'll not die. uh, Death is something that is going to happen, because anything that's physical will tear down. But what the freedom from psychological time does is it will give you a kind of life that is really deep. It will give you a high quality of life where you might have pain, you might have any of these particular emotions and feelings at a healthy level, but that is not so in the world that we live in now. Each and everything people get hurt because they are so identified with each and everything that they have done, because they have so many images, they have so many identities about themselves, so many beliefs. Everything comes down to the identity that they have developed over a particular period. And all that can just die if you just observe that psychological time exists and you're the one who's creating it each and every moment. And the observation of every single thought, observation of every single feeling will bring an end to all of the suffering. The suffering will end once the psychological time has ended in you, and then you are completely free to access any information from your past, to go anywhere in your past, to learn from your past, and not be affected by it, not suffer even a cent% from it. So the past at for that particular person will only become a kind of a repository where he can go, he can dive in, and he can become a better person. Because there is no attachment to his past, all he would do is he will grow. And that is what being a complete human being means. I hope that happens to you one day, and it really does not take much of an effort to just see that psychological time exists. And I really wish for every human being to be able to see that, because that brings an end to suffering, which people are having are having so much of a problem to not suffer, to not bring suffering to themselves. Sure, there are problems in the world. Every human being has problems. There's not a single human being who is spared from having problems. But suffering is different from pain. Suffering is different from being hurt all the time. Suffering is different from taking abuse all the time. Suffering is different from anything that you want to do healthily. If you have time in your mind, if time exists here, that means you have chosen something unconsciously and you're suffering because you are not conscious about it. So if you bring an end to time psychologically, that will bring a complete halt to your suffering. You will not you'll not you'll really have an insight. You will have continuous insights. You will have continuous realizations of how your own mind functions, how any person's mind functions, and how deep another other people are into their own sufferings. It's only when you heal yourself, it's only when you bring an end to psychological time, that you'll become free and you'll become a complete human being.